Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, fam? It's Hot Boxing Minute, your favorite pharmaceutical engineer turned boxing analyst, back at you with that uncut realness as only I can serve it to you. We got a lot to cover on this video right here. We got, of course, Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. That fight weekend just passed us. I wanted to go a little bit into what was going on with that fight card, especially the two big fights that were on that fight card. Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul and Amanda Serrano versus, goodness, what was her name? Heather Hardy, pardon me. And then I also want to talk a little bit about that big fight card next weekend out there in Glendale, Arizona between Oscar Valdez and Emanuel Navarette. A lot of ground I'm going to try to cover in this video. My apologies for not being more consistent on the YouTube stuff, folks. I get paid very well on that TikTok platform. So sometimes when I'm in a time crunch and I barely have enough time to make my TikTok videos, it's really hard sometimes for me to get down to making these long format YouTube content videos. I definitely post my interviews on here, but anyways, out there in Dallas, Texas, at the American Airlines Center, Jake Paul got the clear decision win over Nate Diaz. The scores were pretty wide, 98-91, 98-91, 97-92. Scorecards like that are very indicative of a sweep. And I would have probably given Nate Diaz maybe 2 or 3 rounds, definitely towards the end part of the fight, as normal in Nate Diaz fashion. What you could expect if you've ever watched Nate Diaz inside the octagon is that he doesn't turn up until 15 to 20 minutes into a fight, which sometimes is a little bit too late, to be honest. But he started to turn up about round 8 or round 9, and he did make it difficult, but only at the very end of the fight against Jake Paul. Jake Paul put in all that good work in the beginning of the fight, even got the knockdown, I believe, in the 5th round. Of course, a lot of the MMA fans were online saying they felt it was a robbery or that it was all a setup, or they felt that Nate Diaz had won the fight 9 rounds to 1. There appears to be some misunderstanding as far as how to score boxing matches or how to rate punches. No knock to Nate Diaz. He's an MMA legend, fun dude with the Stockton slap from the mean streets of Stockton, but he was really doing a lot of punches from the shoulder and doing a lot of slippy slappy stuff. That's not boxing, folks. You got to sit down in your punches. You have to have punches connect, and they have to connect with effective force. So clearly, Jake Paul was landing the punches that were more meaningful throughout the entirety of the fight. And then you had, obviously, Nate Diaz in the last few rounds kind of turn up and make it very, very interesting. I found the fight to be phenomenally entertaining. I know Jake Paul has a lot of criticisms, and he definitely had his criticisms going into that Nate Diaz fight, and even after he won that fight against Nate Diaz. I'm not really sure why people are so mad at Jake Paul. I think a lot of people have a difficulty separating his social media persona and his marketing persona between what it is he actually does inside the ring. He is 5-1. He is a boxer, folks, a professional boxer. Accept the reality of it. He's fighting in 8-ounce or 10-ounce gloves. He's fighting under Queensberry rules. It gets approved by the community boxing commissions, wherever it is he's fighting at. And he is boxing. Your favorite fighter, their first 5 to 6 to 7 fights were a bunch of nobodies. They were kicking cans. So Jake Paul is out there developing his skill set. He's fighting all the legends, some of the guys he grew up idolizing. And when you're out there criticizing Jake Paul, folks, just keep in mind, about 98% of your average Americans couldn't legitimately bust a grape in a fruit fight, let alone some 200-plus pound young dude like Jake Paul who's got knockout power in his right hand. I hate to break it to you, folks, but if you can't really bust a grape in a fruit fight, when you're complaining about Jake Paul, you got to lower your tone a little bit. Like, really lower your tone. You don't need to be a sucker like that. Like, complain about it, but don't act like Jake Paul is the most vilest thing this world has ever seen. There's a lot worse in this world in grand scheme of things than Jake Paul manipulating a very unusual and very shady boxing game to his own benefit. Make no mistake, the model that Jake Paul is putting out for the world to see and what he's doing in boxing is going to be followed by a legitimate boxer with a deep amateur pedigree and championship potential. And they're going to take Jake Paul's model and they're going to break everything we know about boxing. Might not be now. Might not be tomorrow. In the future, it's coming. Mark my words, folks. So I wouldn't be so quick to knock Jake Paul. I know it's like the easy thing to do. all this criticize Jake Paul. I'm not sure what that's about, but do you, if it makes you happy. The co-main event for that Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz undercard was the ever so classy 7-division women's boxing champion Amanda Serrano. She fought Heather Hardy, and it pretty much went as most of us would have expected it to go. If you know Heather Hardy, you know she is tough as they come. Heather Hardy was kind of getting beat down ridiculous in that fight against Amanda Serrano. Heather Hardy is 41 years old. She's kind of a rough and tumble legend in the women's boxing world. Much like Amanda Serrano, she also has fought in mixed martial arts inside the octagon. Heather Hardy is 41 years old. A lot of people were very stunned to see the kind of abuse she was taking at the hands of Amanda Serrano. But that is very prototypical, very typical of Heather Hardy. That's the kind of abuse she's normally used to taking. Heather Hardy is always going to be fun to watch in a fight. She is not meant to be fighting world-level competition like Amanda Serrano. No knock to Heather Hardy. She's a sweetheart, one of the nicest human beings ever. But it was clearly a sweep on the cards in favor of Amanda Serrano. The cards as read out were, oh goodness, I didn't actually write them down. But either way, it was a dominant performance on behalf of Amanda Serrano. So Amanda Serrano, let's see where she's at right now. Let me pull this up right now. Amanda Serrano successfully defended her undisputed featherweight championship. That's the WBO, WBA, IBF, WBC, and Ring Lineal titles against Heather Hardy this weekend. Amanda Serrano is already 34 years old. She's been involved in many, many wars. After the fight, she did mention names like Alicia Baumgardner and Katie Taylor. I'm not sure how feasible her rematch with Katie Taylor is, given that Katie Taylor is 37 years old, and Katie Taylor herself experienced her first career loss at the hands of Chantel Cameron. So Katie Taylor is hell-bent on getting that loss back, or getting that win back against Chantel Cameron. And at 37 years old, at any given moment, we don't know whether Katie Taylor might retire or not. Alicia Baumgardner is looking like a real tantalizing option for Amanda Serrano. The age and the wear and tear on Amanda Serrano is my biggest concern. Amanda Serrano is 34 years old, a 7-division boxing champion, and she's been in some real tough fights. She's kind of one of those volume type of fighters that grinds it out, whereas Alicia Baumgardner at 29 years old is a much fresher fighter, a much more athletic fighter, and much less inclined to sit and stand and bang and take a lot of damage. Alicia Baumgardner has a lot more defensive slickness than, say, Amanda Serrano. But regardless, it's still a match that I think is very fascinating. Amanda Serrano's next 2 and number 3 ranked opponents in that featherweight body of females are people she's already beat, Erica Cruz and Sarah Mahfoud. So her next logical step, in my opinion, would be a fight between her and Alicia Baumgardner. We saw Alicia Baumgardner can pack an arena. We already know Amanda Serrano can do so in New York City. I'm all for an Amanda Serrano versus Alicia Baumgardner fight. Maybe it's just me dreaming. Boxing community, how do you think a fight between Amanda Serrano and Alicia Baumgardner sounds? And how do you think that fight would actually break down if they were to see each other inside the ring? Let me know in the comments section, y'all. Tap in. I'm going to switch over from that fight card. There was a bunch of other little interesting fight cards on there, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about that one. There was a guy named Ashton Sylvie who was really dope from Long Beach County. He got a really awesome knockout win. Great look for a prospect. And then, of course, you had Shadeja Green. Went the full distance. And that was a good look for her. She had a very tough, was it Olivia Curry, I believe was her opponent's name. And now Shadeja Green and the quote, Clarissa Shields are going at it online. I would love to see a fight between them two. Either way. Switching modes. So we're done talking about Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. Out there this weekend at the Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, California, 3-time boxing champion Emanuel Navarette puts his WBO super featherweight title on the line against former 2-division champion Oscar Valdez. Now, on paper, stylistically, these two getting in the ring together and fighting has all the makings of a Marco Antonio Barrera versus Eric Morales type of lightweight Mexican shootout. We already know Emanuel Navarette likes to throw volume. He's very unorthodox, has long limbs, throws those crazy uppercuts from a far distance and hits you from weird angles. And then, of course, we got Oscar Valdez, Mexico's only 2-time Olympic competitor. Also a former 2-division champion himself with knockout power and a great counterpunching game. This fight is probably going to be one of the better fights of the year. At least I think it's going to be. Might even be a possible fight of the year contender. Boxing community going into this weekend. How do you think that fight breaks down between Emanuel Navarette and Oscar Valdez? Tap in. And yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I know Emanuel Navarette, he started off. Emanuel Navarette, El Vaquero, is a very interesting character with a very interesting style. He's kind of tall, kind of long with his reach, likes to throw up uppercuts from very unusual angles and from very unusual distances. He actually started off in the junior featherweight division. That is the same division that Emanuel Navarette is currently the unified champion is. He used to hold the WBO junior featherweight title that Emanuel Navarette currently holds. Emanuel Navarette has that plus the WBC that he just got off of Cool Boy Stephen Fulton. Emanuel Navarette got that belt, that WBO strap off of Isaac Dogbo in very fun back-to-back barn burner fights with Isaac Dogbo. Both of those guys are very much in the high volume, battle of attrition type of style. But Emanuel Navarette has done nothing but impress up until this point in his career. He had some awesome competitive close fights with Eduardo Diaz and Liam Wilson in his last 2 fights, has shown some vulnerability. But other than that, Emanuel Navarette has still successfully defended his straps and has won recently that new WBO super featherweight title that is going to be defending against Oscar Valdez. And it should be an interesting matchup. Oscar Valdez, of course, I've interviewed him on my channel before. Gotta love Oscar Valdez. He's got that warrior mentality. Some people won't let the Fetchermine thing go that happened a few years back. That's neither here nor there in my opinion. I believe in forgiveness. Everybody makes a mistake, you get over it. You'd be amazed how many of your favorite boxing heroes has flipped up and made the mistake and gotten caught or pissed hot in certain occasions. Hey, this is the boxing game. It is what it is, folks. Oscar Valdez is a 2-division boxing champion. Mexico's only 2-time Olympian. He didn't medal, but he fought some of the best names in his era. He actually had I think a fight or 2 with Vasil Lomachenko. He beat Maxim Dadashev, rest in peace. He beat Jojo Diaz. He beat Oshaki Foster in the amateurs. Of course, he had that awesome, stunning knockout over Miguel Berchelt. And now he's looking at a fight with Emanuel Navarette. He's fresh off of a win, a very decisive decision win over a very tough Adam Blue Nose Lopez. It was a rematch of a fight they had previous a few years back when Oscar Valdez was just switching over his trainers and had linked up with, of course, Eddie Reynoso. And Oscar Valdez got that knockout over Miguel Berchelt, set the world on fire, and met a unstoppable force in the form of Shakur Stevenson. He lost to Shakur Stevenson. Hey, he didn't get knocked out. He lost on decisions. Clearly, Shakur Stevenson was a little bit too much. No biggie. That's 1 loss on his record. He was injured. Got that win against Adam Blue Nose Lopez. Now he's looking at becoming a champion once again, a 3-time champion against Emanuel Navarette, and this should be very interesting. I like both of these fighters a lot. I do believe someone with Emanuel Navarette and Oscar Valdez, it's a great style matchup. I believe Emanuel Navarette has slowly started to get more and more exposed as his career has gone further along. Eduardo Diaz was having a lot of success early against Emanuel Navarette before Emanuel Navarette stopped him with that wicked body shot. And I think he might have broke one of his ribs. I'm not sure. Liam Wilson knocked Emanuel Navarette down and had him in a lot of trouble with that powered left hook that he had. And I would like to think that Oscar Valdez has a little bit better pedigree and stronger knockout power than Liam Wilson does. Call it a hunch, but we've seen Oscar Valdez did that knockout check hook walking backwards against Berchelt. We know Oscar Valdez is capable of throwing those overhand rights. Oscar Valdez, I believe, has a style and a counterpunching ability to really catch Emanuel Navarette in the middle of one of those long leaping uppercuts that he shouldn't be throwing from far distance. I believe Oscar Valdez possesses the discipline, the power, and the technique to make it a very miserable night for Emanuel Navarette. I'm going with Oscar Valdez by late stoppage. Boxing community, how do you think that fight plays out? Let me know in the comment section, y'all. Tap in. Anyways, that's going to end this video. Leave a question, leave a comment in the comment box. Hit that like button, hit follow if you haven't already done so. This is Hot Boxing Minute, the future of boxing analysis on YouTube and TikTok. Peace.